Ethan Cole is first seen in the humblest of settings, a small, old diner tucked away on a busy street corner. He wears a plain uniform, takes orders quietly, and keeps to himself as he cleans tables and carries trays. To the outside world, Ethan is just another man scraping by, a face most wouldn't notice twice. His coworkers joke about him constantly, calling him Dreamless Ethan or Mr. No Ambition, ridiculing his choice to work in such a place when even they think he could do better. Their laughter is sharp, careless, and laced with the cruelty of people who don't know the truth. Yet Ethan never argues, never snaps back. He just offers that faint, knowing smile. A smile that conceals the staggering reality of who he is, the sole heir to Cole Enterprises, the city's most powerful real estate empire. This juxtaposition of what the world assumes versus who he really is becomes the emotional hook. The audience immediately feels curiosity. Why would someone of such wealth and influence choose to live as if he were ordinary? The irony sharpens when the mocking grows harsher. Yet Ethan remains unshaken, a man seemingly content to let others underestimate him. His silence, his restraint, speaks louder than any rebuttal, revealing both his humility and his inner conflict. The emotional pull begins here. We feel the injustice of their ridicule while sensing Ethan's quiet power. But more importantly, we're drawn to wonder what burden or truth compels him to hide in plain sight. Amid this harshness, a small but significant kindness emerges. Maya Torres, a 28-year-old nurse just finishing her exhausting night shift, sits at the counter for a late breakfast. Unlike the others, she notices Ethan's silence and doesn't treat him as invisible. When one of the other waiters drops a rude comment about Ethan's lack of ambition, Maya's soft glance lingers on him with quiet disapproval of their cruelty. Instead of laughter, she offers him a genuine smile, and when he serves her coffee, she thanks him warmly, as if she sees him as more than just a faceless worker. To Ethan, this moment resonates deeply. For years, he has been surrounded by people who either envy him or expect something from him once they know his true status. Here, in this simple diner exchange, Maya gives him something rare, kindness with no strings attached. He doesn't reveal his secret, but in her presence, he feels seen, not as Ethan Cole, heir to an empire, but simply as Ethan, a man. This sparks the first flicker of connection, a fragile thread of humanity that stands in contrast to the cold, transactional relationships that dominate his real world. For the audience, Maya represents hope, a character whose sincerity could be the answer to Ethan's hidden longing, to be loved not for his fortune, but for his soul. Their interaction is brief, but it plants the seed of a relationship that will become the story's beating heart. That evening, the contrast between Ethan's two worlds explodes into view. From the modest diner to the grand halls of the Cole family mansion, we see Ethan seated at a glittering dinner table where opulence rules. Here, he is no longer the humble worker mocked for being ordinary, but the reluctant heir and CEO in waiting, the man everyone else in the city reveres. His family, sharp, ambitious, and hungry for control, wastes no time reminding him of his obligations. They press him to embrace his role, to secure the future of the empire by marrying into wealth and influence, and to keep ordinary people at arm's length. His father's voice is stern, his mother's sharp, his siblings competitive. Together, they echo the warning that ordinary kindness is nothing but a mask, that people like Maya only see dollar signs once they discover his name. Ethan listens, but unlike in the diner, he does not smile. Inside, he wrestles with the growing dissonance between the life his family insists he must live and the simple, genuine moment he experienced earlier with Maya. This tension drives him toward a daring choice, to shed the weight of his name temporarily and continue living as an anonymous man. His mission will be a test, to discover if someone can truly love him for who he is, not for the fortune or power tied to him. The cliffhanger lands here, sharp and unresolved. As the richest man in town, Ethan has every resource at his disposal, yet his greatest challenge is a question no amount of money can buy the answer to. Is real love even possible for someone like him? The curtain falls on this decision, leaving the audience eager to see who will stand by him when the truth comes to light. Ethan Cole was born into a life most people could only dream of, a childhood framed by sprawling mansions, private schools, and summer estates in Europe. Yet beneath the polished surface of wealth, his upbringing was marked by emotional absence. His father, Richard Cole, the towering figure behind Cole Enterprises, was consumed by power, spending more time in boardrooms than in his son's life. His mother, Elena, while refined and graceful, was distant, preoccupied with appearances and social reputation rather than nurturing bonds. Their marriage slowly rotted under the weight of greed, betrayal, and endless arguments about money and status. Ethan, though surrounded by servants and luxuries, often felt invisible, a boy left to piece together meaning from broken family dinners and cold silences. He learned early that wealth did not guarantee love, and promises could fracture under the pressure of ambition. By the time his parents' marriage formally collapsed, Ethan had made a vow to himself. He would never repeat the cycle of hollow affection disguised as partnership. The lesson etched into him was that love, if it were to mean anything, had to be built on trust, sincerity, and choice, not bank accounts or social contracts. This vow explains why, as an adult, Ethan distances himself from his inheritance, yearning for a life stripped of pretense. His choice to work at a diner is not only rebellion against his gilded cage, but also a desperate search for authenticity in a world where every handshake seems transactional. For Ethan, wealth is not privilege but a prison, and his backstory shapes his deepest fear that no one will ever truly see him beyond the name Cole. Maya Torres' story is the opposite of Ethan's, yet just as heavy with scars. She was raised in a modest, middle-class family where her father, a factory worker, became the heart of their home, steady, hardworking, and fiercely protective. But tragedy struck when he died in a workplace accident, leaving Maya, her mother, and younger brother adrift. Overnight, she became the anchor of her family, shouldering responsibilities that few her age could bear. Her mother's health declined rapidly, years of grief and illness weighing heavily on her, while her younger brother looked to Maya for both guidance and survival. Juggling nursing school, part-time jobs, and caregiving duties, she grew into a woman forged by hardship, resilient, compassionate, and unwilling to compromise her integrity. Money was always scarce, yet Maya valued the things it could never buy: honesty, trust, and love. She learned to find beauty in small victories, like stretching a paycheck just far enough to cover rent, or catching her brother's smile despite the weight they carried. While her friends drifted toward easier, more glamorous paths, Maya remained grounded, convinced that real strength meant standing by your loved ones when life grew hardest. Unlike Ethan, she never knew luxury, but she knew sincerity, and she clung to it as her moral compass. Her backstory defines why she treats Ethan with kindness in the diner, not because she pities him, but because she recognizes in him the quiet dignity of someone fighting unseen battles. What Maya does not realize is that Ethan's scars and her own mirror one another, both shaped by loss, though from opposite worlds. Her values of honesty and work ethic will become the lens through which she unknowingly tests Ethan's deepest longing, to be loved without the shadow of wealth distorting the truth. The tension between Ethan's two worlds sharpens through the people closest to him. His sister, Victoria Cole, embodies everything he resents about their family legacy. At 31, she is sharp, ambitious, and fiercely loyal to the empire, yet cynical about human connection. She openly warns Ethan, her words like a blade: You'll regret trusting the wrong woman. Loyalty only exists when tested by money. To her, wealth is the only measure of loyalty, a philosophy Ethan despises but cannot dismiss. For he has seen betrayal firsthand in their parents' failed marriage. This family pressure looms as Ethan takes bold steps to live differently. He rents a modest apartment in a quieter part of town, far from his family's gated estates, and commits to his diner job as if it were his real life. Here, his paths begin to cross more often with Maya. Their friendship grows slowly. In quiet conversations after her night shifts, in small gestures like sharing coffee, and in the way she talks to him as if he were simply a man, not an heir. To Maya, Ethan appears to be just another struggling soul, kind, humble, and perhaps a little lonely. Yet the irony is unavoidable. Even as he hides his fortune, the weight of his wealthy world threatens to intrude. A sleek black car sometimes waits for him after work, drawing suspicious glances. A phone call from his family interrupts moments with Maya, his tone suddenly clipped and formal. These subtle cracks foreshadow the inevitable collision of his two lives. The present setup paints Ethan in a precarious position, torn between the life he craves with Maya, rooted in honesty and simplicity, and the life he cannot fully abandon, bound by legacy, wealth, and a sister who never stops reminding him of the dangers of love. This brewing tension ensures that their connection, however genuine, will soon be tested by truths too big to remain hidden. The turning point strikes suddenly, tearing through the fragile piece of Maya's already burdened life. Her younger brother, Daniel, who works as a part-time orderly at the hospital, is accused of theft after an expensive piece of medical equipment goes missing. The accusation spreads like wildfire through the hospital corridors, with whispers branding him a thief before he even has a chance to defend himself. For Maya, the blow is devastating. She knows her brother, flawed, young, sometimes reckless, but never dishonest. To lose his job would not only brand him permanently, but also crush their family's already precarious stability. Bills are stacked on the kitchen counter. Her mother's medications depend on Daniel's paycheck, and Maya herself is barely staying afloat. The hospital administration, eager to make an example, moves swiftly, threatening suspension and legal action. Yet, while colleagues and so-called friends distance themselves, Maya remains steadfast. She refuses to abandon Daniel, telling him, with fierce resolve, that no matter how bleak things look, she believes in his innocence. This crisis becomes the fire that tests her strength, but it also creates the perfect opening for Ethan's hidden world to slip into hers. Watching her silently, he feels a rising conflict within himself. To step in openly would reveal his true identity, but to do nothing would betray the trust beginning to bloom between them. Torn between secrecy and action, Ethan makes his choice. Behind the scenes, he discreetly calls on his influence, pulling strings through connections at the hospital board, arranging for the real culprit's record to surface, and ensuring Daniel's name is quietly cleared. Yet he cloaks it all in coincidence, carefully staging it as if fortune had shifted in their favor, never letting Maya see the hand that moved fate. The aftermath of the ordeal becomes the soil where Ethan and Maya's bond deepens. Relieved, yet shaken, Maya clings to the fragile victory, believing Daniel's freedom to be the result of persistence and luck. Exhausted after days of defending her brother, she finds herself opening up to Ethan in ways she never expected. Late one evening, as they share coffee in the quiet corner of the diner after her shift, Maya confides in him. Her words are raw, carrying the weight of someone who has fought too many battles alone. I don't care about what people own. I care about who they are when no one's watching. For Ethan, the confession cuts straight through his defenses. She doesn't know she is speaking directly into his deepest wound, the fear of being seen only as a fortune, never as a man. In this moment, Maya unknowingly offers him what he has craved all along: validation that his worth lies in character, not inheritance. He listens intently, careful not to let his emotions spill too openly, but inside he feels an unfamiliar surge of hope. She trusts him, not because of the power he secretly wields, but because of the quiet steadiness he shows when life bears down on her. For the first time in years, Ethan allows himself to imagine what it might be like to be truly loved without condition. The bond is still fragile, unspoken, but it is undeniably there, growing stronger with every small kindness shared between them. What began as simple diner conversations is transforming into something deeper, tethered by vulnerability and trust. Yet, even as Ethan basks in this fragile closeness, a shadow looms, because secrets, no matter how carefully buried, always find a way to surface. What neither Ethan nor Maya realizes is that their delicate bond is already under quiet threat. Back in the marble halls of the Cole family estate, Victoria Cole is watching closely. Suspicious of her brother's uncharacteristic absences and wary of his insistence on living below his station, she grows convinced that someone has caught his attention. For Victoria, love has always been a currency, a transaction measured in gains and losses. When she hears whispers of a young nurse often seen with Ethan, her instincts sharpen. Unwilling to trust appearances, she hires a private investigator, determined to uncover everything about Maya, and more importantly, to confirm whether Ethan has been hiding his true life from her. The investigator works swiftly, compiling photographs of Ethan in his modest apartment, of the sleek cars that occasionally shadow him, of meetings where he slips between worlds. Piece by piece, the puzzle comes together, and Victoria's suspicions are confirmed. Ethan is concealing his identity. But where Ethan sees hope for love, Victoria sees only danger. To her, Maya represents exactly what she has always warned Ethan about: an ordinary woman who, once she learns the truth, will inevitably want the fortune more than the man. Though she holds her discovery close, waiting for the right moment to strike, Victoria sharpens her plan. She intends to expose Ethan's secret not only to Maya, but to the entire city, tearing away the fragile foundation of trust he has begun to build. In her mind, she is not destroying her brother, she is saving him from betrayal. Yet for Ethan, the truth she holds will not only endanger his relationship with Maya, but also ignite the central conflict of his journey. Can love built on lies ever survive the light of truth? Ethan finds himself walking a tightrope of desire and fear. Each day spent with Maya pulls him closer to the truth he longs to reveal, yet the risk of losing her freezes the words in his throat. The lie that began as a shield now hangs over him like a blade, growing sharper with every heartbeat. When she laughs with him, when she thanks him for the smallest gestures, when her tired eyes soften at the end of a long shift, he aches to tell her, "I'm not who you think I am." But fear is louder. What if she sees his confession not as honesty, but as manipulation, proof that he never trusted her with his real self? His silence becomes its own betrayal, invisible but corrosive. Yet, amidst the weight of secrets, their bond deepens. Maya, with her natural openness, begins drawing him into her world. She invites him one evening into her family's modest home, a small apartment cluttered but alive with warmth. Ethan sits at their worn dining table, listening to her mother's gentle teasing and her brother's playful banter. It is unlike anything in the Cole grandeur of the Cole mansion. Here, there is no performance, no competition, no hunger for control. For the first time, Ethan tastes what family could mean if stripped of ambition, a fragile but genuine connection built on love rather than power. The contrast shakes him. He realizes that the very thing he has always craved, warmth without condition, is finally within his reach. Yet he is sabotaging it by hiding who he really is. The lie festers, but so does hope, leaving Ethan trapped between the dream of a life with Maya and the nightmare of shattering it with the truth. As Ethan wrestles with his secret, Maya's world grows more complicated. The hospital where she works begins pressing harder on her outstanding debts, costs tied to her mother's ongoing treatments. The numbers pile up mercilessly, each bill a reminder of how close they are to losing stability altogether. Friends urge her to ask for help, but Maya, proud and stubborn in her values, refuses to bend. "We'll survive by standing on our own," she tells Ethan one evening, her voice firm despite the weariness in her eyes. For Ethan, the words cut deep. He has the power to erase her struggles with a single call, a single signature, yet he cannot, not without unmasking himself. He watches her suffer with quiet strength, shouldering burdens far greater than her frame should bear, and he admires her even more. But admiration quickly curdles into frustration. He hates himself for standing by, for letting her drown in a storm he could calm. This helplessness makes his silence unbearable. The lie is no longer just about protecting himself, but about denying her the relief she so desperately deserves. In moments when her exhaustion is visible, Ethan's hand almost reaches for the truth, but then fear restrains him. Fear that she will see his reveal not as salvation, but as betrayal. To Maya, accepting charity feels like surrendering dignity. How then would she view the fact that the man she trusted has been masquerading as her equal, all while holding the power she swore she didn't need? Ethan's secret is no longer a private weight. It is actively entwining itself around Maya's pain, making him complicit in her suffering. The deeper he falls for her, the more impossible it feels to bridge the gap between who he is and who she believes him to be. Meanwhile, Ethan's double life grows harder to balance. His family, appalled by his insistence on living like a beggar, escalates their demands. At a formal dinner in the Cole mansion, his father lays down an ultimatum: marry the daughter of a wealthy socialite family to strengthen the empire, or risk being cut off from both inheritance and influence. Victoria, ever the sharp observer, twists the knife further, reminding him that his little nurse friend would never survive the scrutiny of their world. Every word from them intensifies the suffocation Ethan feels, pushing him deeper into secrecy but also closer to a breaking point. Yet the consequences of this double life begin bleeding into his time with Maya. She starts to notice the cracks, his sudden disappearances in the middle of the day, the carefully vague excuses, the way he sometimes slips into a tone too polished for a diner worker. One evening, after he leaves abruptly for what is actually a board meeting, she lingers in unease. Where does he go? Who is he meeting? The suspicion takes root quietly, not yet a storm, but a shadow that grows with each unanswered question. For Maya, who values honesty above all else, the thought that Ethan is hiding something gnaws at the trust they have built. For Ethan, every evasive answer feels like a betrayal he never intended but can no longer avoid. Their closeness, once effortless, now carries an undercurrent of tension, as if the truth is pressing at the edges of every shared glance and every half-finished sentence. The stage is set. Ethan's silence is about to collide with Maya's suspicion, and when the truth finally breaks, it will not only test their bond, but also expose whether love can survive. When it has been built in the shadow of lies, the night of the charity gala begins with glittering lights and orchestral music. A world so far removed from Maya's modest life that she feels out of place the moment she steps inside. She had been invited as a nurse representative, recognized for her dedication to patient care and long hours at the hospital, and though hesitant, she agreed, proud to show her family that her hard work had meaning beyond survival. Dressed in a borrowed gown, she moves through the ballroom with awe and nervous humility, unaware that the event is hosted by none other than Cole Enterprises. The hall radiates wealth. Crystal chandeliers, champagne towers, and conversations dripping with arrogance. Then the moment arrives that changes everything. The host's voice echoes across the room. Please welcome Ethan Cole, heir to Cole Enterprises. Maya freezes, her heart hammering as she watches Ethan stride onto the stage. Not in his simple diner uniform, but in a tailored suit. Every inch the billionaire's son she never knew existed. The crowd erupts in applause, but for Maya, the sound drowns into a hollow roar. Images flash in her mind: his humble apartment, his diner shifts, his quiet laughter, all collapsing under the weight of the truth. He had not been her equal. He had not been struggling beside her. He had been lying, carefully, deliberately, while she opened her heart. The man she trusted, the man who had sat at her mother's table and shared in their fragile warmth, had concealed the single truth that defined him most. For Maya, the betrayal is not just about wealth. It is about trust shattered into jagged pieces. The Ethan she thought she knew vanishes under the glare of stage lights, leaving only a stranger cloaked in power and deception. The confrontation is swift and merciless. When Ethan steps down from the stage and approaches her, hope flickers in his eyes, hope that she will understand, that she will see beyond the reveal. But Maya's voice trembles with fury and heartbreak. You made me believe we were the same when you've been lying this whole time. The words land like blows, each syllable cutting deeper than any wound money could heal. She recounts every moment they shared, the late-night coffees, the confessions, the quiet trust, all of it now poisoned by the knowledge that he had chosen to see. Ethan tries to speak, to explain that his silence was born from fear of losing her. Not manipulation, but his words stumble, failing against the storm of her betrayal. Then, as if the knife were not twisted deep enough, Victoria steps into the spotlight, her voice smooth and venomous. She declares for all to hear that Maya's presence in Ethan's life was predictable, that ordinary women always cling to wealth when they smell it, that Maya must have seen Ethan's fortune even in disguise. The crowd murmurs, scandal simmering, and Maya's cheeks burn with humiliation. She feels stripped bare, her dignity ripped away in front of strangers who laugh behind champagne glasses. Her eyes lock on Ethan one last time, filled not with love but with wounded disbelief, before she turns and walks out of the gala, her footsteps echoing louder than the music. Ethan reaches after her, desperate, but the weight of Victoria's betrayal and the eyes of the world hold him back. In that instant, Maya is gone, not just from the ballroom, but from the fragile dream they had been building together. As the doors close behind Maya, Ethan stands in the center of the opulent ballroom, surrounded by chandeliers and applause that suddenly feel like mockery. For years, people had bowed to his wealth, envied his name, and sought his influence. Yet now, with all the power in the world at his fingertips, he feels utterly powerless. He had fought so hard to be seen as more than an heir, to escape the gilded prison of his birthright, and in one moment, everything collapsed. The woman who had looked at him and seen Ethan the man, not Ethan the billionaire, is gone, driven away by the very secret he clung to out of desperation. His family circles him, Victoria smug in her victory, his father coldly indifferent, his mother urging him to forget the nurse and embrace his destiny. But their words mean nothing. The empire, the fortune, the legacy, all of it feels hollow now, ashes in his hands. For the first time, Ethan realizes that money cannot buy back trust, nor can it mend the wound he inflicted by hiding the truth. He is left standing in a room full of admirers, yet lonelier than he has ever been. In that silence, he confronts his lowest point. He has everything and nothing. Maya, the one person who saw him for who he was when no one was watching, is gone, and without her, all that remains is a cage lined with gold. His choice to live a double life has led him not to love, but to devastation. And the weight of that mistake presses down until even the air feels too heavy to breathe. After the shattering betrayal at the gala, Maya withdraws, not into despair, but into determination. The pain of Ethan's lies lingers, but she refuses to let it define her. She throws herself into her family and her work at the hospital, reclaiming the pieces of herself that felt broken. Daniel, her brother, is eventually cleared of all charges, the evidence proving his innocence quietly surfacing, though Maya doesn't yet know that Ethan was the invisible hand that made it happen. For her, the victory is proof that perseverance and truth will always prevail, even against systems rigged against the powerless. She leans into her role as both caregiver and nurse, finding strength in the rhythm of her shifts, in the patients who thank her for her compassion, and in the quiet resilience of her family. At home, laughter begins to return in small doses. Her mother's health steadies, and Daniel talks again about returning to school. Healing does not erase the betrayal, but it gives Maya perspective. She sees that while Ethan's actions cut deep, her worth is not tied to him, nor to anyone else. She can stand on her own, proud of a life she has built without shortcuts, without deception. Yet, in quiet moments, when she remembers the way Ethan listened to her stories or the warmth in his laughter, a flicker of conflict remains. Was everything a lie? Or was the man she knew at the diner real despite the deception? For now, Maya pushes the thought aside, choosing instead to reclaim herself, proving that betrayal may wound, but it cannot break her. Her healing becomes an act of defiance, a reminder that love, when it comes again, must meet her on equal ground. For Ethan, the aftermath of Maya's departure becomes the crucible that finally forces him to grow. Stripped of her trust, confronted with the emptiness of wealth without love, he begins dismantling the chains his family has wrapped around him. When his father insists on the arranged marriage, Ethan refuses, not in anger, but in resolve. For the first time, he speaks with conviction. He will not marry for power, nor live as a pawn in the Cole Empire's endless cycle of ambition. Instead, he takes the reins of Cole Enterprises on his own terms, reimagining what leadership can mean. Board members scoff when he redirects resources towards social programs, particularly healthcare reform, but Ethan holds his ground. Hospitals, he insists, will no longer cut corners on safety or exploit the vulnerable, the very kind of injustice that nearly destroyed Maya's brother. The more resistance he faces, the more determined he becomes, fueled not by legacy but by purpose. This transformation is not about winning Maya back. Though she inspires it, it is about proving to himself that he can be more than the product of his family's greed. He begins to find fulfillment in this new path, his life gaining meaning not from applause but from impact. Still, beneath the progress, a hollow ache remains. Every victory feels muted without the person who once looked at him and saw just Ethan. For the first time, he understands what humility truly means and what love demands. No grand gesture, no inheritance, no empire can erase the truth. The only way forward is honesty. And so, when he finally resolves to face Maya again, it is not as a billionaire heir, but as a flawed man ready to stand bare before her judgment. When Ethan approaches Maya again, it is without fanfare, without wealth, without the shield of his name. He finds her outside the hospital after a long shift, her hair pulled back, exhaustion etched into her face, yet still carrying that unshakable strength he admires. This time, he doesn't try to charm her, doesn't attempt to buy forgiveness. He speaks plainly, his voice stripped of all pretense. He admits he was afraid that if she knew the truth, she would never trust him, that he would lose the one person who saw him without judgment. His apology is not polished. It stumbles, raw and imperfect, but real. He tells her he doesn't expect forgiveness, only the chance to prove he can be the man she believed he was. Maya listens in silence, her emotions a storm she refuses to show. When she finally speaks, her words are steady, uncompromising. Love built on lies can't survive. If you want me to believe you, show me the man you are, not the name you carry. Her response is not rejection, but neither is it absolution. It is a challenge, a boundary, a demand for integrity over illusion. Ethan accepts it quietly, knowing he has no right to ask for more. The moment hangs fragile in the air, not an ending, but a beginning, the first step in a long road of rebuilding trust. For Maya, the power shifts. She is no longer the woman deceived, but the one who decides whether his actions will ever align with his words. For Ethan, it is the humbling truth that love is not owed. It must be earned daily through honesty and proof. Their story does not end with forgiveness, but with the possibility of something stronger than before, a love reborn. If only he proves worthy. Months have passed since the painful confrontation at the gala, and Maya has slowly found balance again. She now works at a new community clinic, a modest but well-equipped space that provides care for people who cannot afford the towering costs of larger hospitals. It feels different from her old workplace, less cold, less bureaucratic, more human. Patients thank her not with formalities, but with genuine gratitude. Children draw her little pictures with crayons, and families treat her as more than just a nurse in uniform. At first, she never thought much about who funded the clinic. To her, it was just another posting, another chance to keep serving. But one evening, when she stays late to help close, she notices a plaque tucked discreetly on a wall near the supply room. Unlike other clinics, where donors' names gleam in bold letters, this one simply reads, "For those who need care, no matter their means." No name, no crest, no company attached. Curious, she asks the director, who shrugs and explains that the donor insisted on anonymity, refusing any recognition. It strikes Maya deeply, not because she suspects Ethan, but because the gesture itself feels so unlike the shallow philanthropy she has seen the wealthy use to polish reputations. Here, the act speaks louder than credit. Days later, when she learns through a quiet slip of paperwork that the funds came from coal enterprises, yet without any official claim, her heart stirs. Ethan's name isn't there, but his presence is everywhere, woven into the walls and medicines, hidden in the safety net now protecting her patients. And for the first time since the betrayal, Maya allows herself to wonder, maybe the man she once loved is still fighting to prove who he really is. One evening, as twilight spills across the clinic windows, Maya stays behind to reorganize supplies after a particularly long shift. The clinic is quieter than usual, the waiting room nearly empty. She moves through the shelves with tired focus until she hears a familiar voice, soft, steady, offering reassurance. Turning, she sees Ethan, not in a suit, not with an entourage. Just Ethan, dressed in plain clothes, kneeling to help an elderly patient adjust her walking stick. There's no crowd watching, no photographers flashing, no board members applauding. He is not here as the billionaire heir of coal enterprises. He is simply a man, getting his time, his attention, his compassion. Maya watches silently from the doorway, her breath caught in her chest. This is not the Ethan who stood on a stage with polished speeches. This is the Ethan she first met at the diner, the man who washed dishes beside her, who listened, who laughed, who carried trays for tired coworkers. Except now, she understands that he has chosen this, that with all his wealth and power, he could be anywhere, yet he is here, quietly helping where no one will see. Something inside her softens, a fragile thaw. Her heart does not leap immediately into forgiveness, but it shifts, recognizing the truth. This man is trying, not to impress, but to be. Ethan looks up at that moment, his expression gentle, unaware that she has been watching. The humility in his presence strikes her more powerfully than any grand gesture ever could. In that instant, Maya realizes that trust is not rebuilt through apologies alone, but through actions that ask for nothing in return. And for the first time, she begins to believe that perhaps his change is real. When their eyes finally meet, the room holds its breath. Ethan freezes, a flicker of surprise crossing his face, quickly replaced by something quieter, hope, fragile and unspoken. He doesn't rush to explain, doesn't fill the silence with excuses or promises. He simply stands, waiting as if to say, I am here. You see me as I am. Maya's gaze lingers on him, searching, measuring, remembering the wound of betrayal, yet seeing now the weight of sincerity in his stillness. For a long moment, she lets the silence speak for both of them, a silence filled not with distance but with possibility. Then, almost imperceptibly, her lips curve into a faint smile, small, tentative, but real. It is not forgiveness, not yet, but it is acknowledgement that she sees his effort, his humanity, his choice to show up without masks. Ethan exhales, the tension in his shoulders softening as a quiet smile of relief spreads across his face in return. In that fleeting exchange, something fragile yet profound passes between them, the first threads of trust, woven not by wealth or grand gestures, but by presence, humility, and truth. The richest man in town, stripped of titles and armor, stands before her as nothing more than himself. And for the first time, Maya values him not for what he owns, but for who he dares to become. The clinic lights hum softly above them, casting their shadows side by side on the wall, not merged yet, but close enough to suggest a future where healing and love might walk together again. Their story does not end with a kiss or a vow, but with something rarer, something truer, the quiet promise of a love slowly, patiently being rebuilt.